when asked to draw the water cycle, let's see what you guys came up with. How about that? So it looks like I have a little flow map going here. Condensation to precipitation, percolation into the soil. I kind of get that runoff, evaporation, back up to condensation. Anybody draw? Oh, there we go. Transpiration from the trees, right? Rising up, condensation, down. We get it. These are rough. I know. Oh, there we go. There's the water cycle. You showed it a little bit. H2O. Oh, look at that one. Look at that. Condensation, precipitation, surface runoff. You're missing percolation and groundwater, but I got it. Transpiration to the evaporation, condensation in the clouds, perspiration, precipitation, sweaty clouds. It's a good name for a band, isn't it? Sweaty clouds. No, maybe not. What? I don't know. Sweaty clouds. Now that I say it, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. No. Yeah. Most things do, right? Well, it's just, that's like a Picasso or something. Or, I get it. Going up and down, Kayla. Okay. All right. So we understand that, folks. We understand that we're talking about cycling matter. We've talked about the water cycle and the carbon and oxygen cycle, and now it's time to talk about the nitrogen cycle. So nitrogen must be cycled through an ecosystem so that the nitrogen is available for organisms to make proteins. Organisms need to make proteins. Why do we need nitrogen for proteins? Because of this right here. What is that? What did I just draw? It's from chapter 3. What is this? It's a monomer of proteins. What is it? What are the monomers of proteins? Amino acids, right? Okay, amino acids. So I just drew an amino acid. NH2 is the amino group of your amino acids. If I do not have nitrogen, can I make proteins? No. Okay? So if I don't have nitrogen to have my amine group of my amino acids, I cannot have proteins. Nitrogen pretty important to every living thing? Yes. Every living thing needs proteins. Without proteins, you don't function. You don't have anything. You are nothing without proteins. Okay? So the nitrogen cycle is the process by which nitrogen circulates among the air, soil, water, and organisms in an ecosystem. Why do I need nitrogen to make, everybody say proteins? Okay. So the atmosphere is about 78% nitrogen gas. And you go, oh, no problem, I'll just breathe it in, right? Everybody say no. So this N2 is not accessible to us by breathing it in. We have to eat it. Okay. So the most organisms cannot use nitrogen gas. Most. Some bacteria can. It must be changed into different forms. So the whole idea of the nitrogen cycle is to get it into a form that we can eat it. What do we eat? Plants and animals, right? Okay? So we need to eat other things that have taken it in somehow. And that's what we do. We're consumers of all sorts of things, not just glucose. So in a process called nitrogen fixation, bacteria actually convert nitrogen into gas into ammonia. And you go, oh, I know what ammonia is. I can just drink that stuff, right? Everybody say, heck no. Heck no, no, no. No, you cannot drink Windex, right? It doesn't work like that. Yeah, you can, but you will die, and we're in the middle of this yellow ribbon week. You know not to do that. Okay? So nitrogen-fixing bacteria live in the soil and on the roots of some plants. Nitrogen may also be fixed by lightning. So I'll just wait for lightning to happen, right? I'll stand out in the rain, and right when it hits something, I'm going to breathe that air in. Will that work? I'll hold up a lightning rod, and I'll get right down next to the bottom of it, and I'll wait. And that's how I'll get my nitrogen. Is that going to work? No, probably not. But we need this process to help us along the way. We'll talk more about that. We can't take it directly in from ammonia. We know that. Okay? And if you smelled ammonia, you wouldn't want to anyway. Anybody ever have a puppy or a kitten? And then their urine ferments for a while? That smell that you're smelling on the newspapers or whatever is ammonia. Okay? Yeah. So it's also fixed when we burn fossil fuels in vehicles. Oh, no problem. I'll just stick my mouth on the tailpipe of a car. That won't work either, now will it? No. Okay, that's another way to, yeah, that's bad. No, that'll kill you. All right. So something else has to happen. So first, it gets fixed from the gas N2 into ammonia. That's called nitrogen fixation. The next thing that has to happen is it has to go through assimilation. Assimilation is the process in which plants absorb nitrogen, and when an animal eats a plant, nitrogen compounds become part of the animal's body. Well, that makes sense. So plants have a way of taking this in, and when they assimilate it, if I assimilate into a culture, I become part of it, right? So this becomes part of the plant, and then I eat the plant, and then it becomes part of me. It's really deep, isn't it? Kind of? No? So during ammonification, the next step, nitrogen from the animal waste or decaying bodies is returned to the soil by bacteria. That's that nasty desiccation or decay smell that you smell in like a puppy or kitten's urine. That's why litter boxes smell, right? So during nitrification, ammonia, NH3, is converted to nitrite and then nitrate. Why would I have to go along these steps? Because I have to return it back into the atmosphere, right? Think about this. What if my nitrogen never got sent back into the air? What would I run out of eventually? If I never put nitrogen back into the atmosphere, what would happen? If I never put nitrogen back up into the atmosphere, what would happen? Répondez-vous, s'il vous plaît. Six of you. I know we're having a little problem with Peardeck, so it's kind of a simple answer if you think about it, but all plants would die, we would die, yep. We wouldn't have any more nitrogen, right? We'd run out. So we'd run out of atmosphere. Yeah, we'd have less matter. Nothing would matter, right? We become space. But you guys, if you kept taking nitrogen out of the air and just kept putting it in the ground, eventually there'd be nothing to take out of the air and go through nitrogen fixation, and you would run out of proteins basically eventually. Okay. And so during denitrification, that nitrate is changed back into nitrogen gas, N2, in the atmosphere. And that's extremely important because this is a cycle. This has to continue. Please don't tap. If you forget your notes, you're not prepared, don't sit there and tap and create disruptions. And it looks like this. This is a very complicated process. I'm going to walk through it with you. You might want to even draw this down with me because this is the more complicated process or cycle out of all of the four we're going to talk about. What happens is this. There's two nitrogens bonded together. Well, what is two nitrogens bonded together? Let's look at it. Nitrogen is in what family? Family 5, right? So it has 5 valence electrons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's 2 of them there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in nitrogen bonds, it actually has 3 covalent bonds that hold it together. Right? So it's bonded covalently, which is a fairly strong bond. That means it's not just going to come apart on its own. Let me explain this to you. It's 78% of the air you breathe in. Everybody take a deep breath in. 78% of that is nitrogen. Now breathe out. You just breathed out 78% nitrogen. Okay? So you don't do anything with it. Why? It's covalently bonded to itself, and nothing inside of you has a strong enough attraction to it to take it in like that. Okay? Because of the covalent bonding. But some bacteria can do this. Lightning can do this too, and coal can do this. Burning fossil fuels. So on the roots of certain beans and certain plants, there are these things called microrhizomes. Microrhizomes are these tiny little nitrogen-fixing bacteria which are able to take the nitrogen out of the air and bring it into the ground. Let me tell you a very important thing about corn and soybeans. You find these on soybeans, you do not find it on corn. So that means if you plant soybeans, it will take nitrogen into the soil, which is a fertilizer, right? And if you plant corn, it will only take nitrogen out and not put it back. What do farmers do? They rotate their crops. One year they will plant soybeans, the next year they will plant corn. Why? To replace the nitrogen. Okay? Make sense now? And that's also why the government subsidizes those two crops. The government only subsidizes corn and soybeans because they need each other. Otherwise, they would just do corn, right? It's cheap. I won't give you the history lesson after the Great Depression of why that happened, but after the Great Depression, they had to feed people, and they decided they were going to subsidize just two crops so they had a lot more food. It also gave us a terribly unhealthy diet, right? Yeah. It's really ironic because now we have like an obesity problem which causes depression from the Great Depression. You know? Not funny, but kind of. Ironic, not funny. Okay. There's a difference between irony and funny. Right? So nitrogen fixation occurs. Those nitrogen-fixing bacteria in the soil also do this. It becomes ammonia. Now, there's a couple different ways to get to this ammonia state. You can also get it from death waste, animals going to the bathroom, and decomposition. So there's two ways you get down to this process of being ammonia. One is nitrogen fixation. The other is ammonification. Then you end up with this NH3 molecule. After NH3, we know we cannot drink ammonia. We can't eat that stuff. You wouldn't want to anyway. It's gross. Okay? But plants can actually bring that in to be part of them through a process called assimilation. So it can become part of plants. Then animals can eat the plants, we can eat the plants, or we can eat the animal that ate the plant and get the nitrogen that way. Or the ammonia can go through nitrification, okay, and become nitrates and then nitrites, and then can be denitrified back into nitrogen gas. Because the unused nitrogen needs to be sent back in the atmosphere because this is a cycle. If it doesn't get put back in the atmosphere, we lose nitrogen in our atmosphere. Like 78% one day, then we'd have 77, eventually we wouldn't have any. Yes? It would. It would prevent that from happening. So, yeah, if we keep burying people, is that a problem? Maybe. You know? But here's the thing. They are going to rot. They are going to desiccate. That nitrogen gas is lighter and less dense, so it will percolate through the soil. So I'm going to retract that whole statement. It will get out. Okay? Yeah, the gas will. Okay. Now some of it will get trapped down there because not everything decomposes. But yeah, because that concrete casket they put it in is porous, right? Like concrete breathes. Rock is porous. Okay. But you will never see Mr. Mason buried in a casket. I think it takes up a natural resource that somebody's going to need someday. You can just light me on fire and throw me somewhere, I don't care. Cremate me is, I think, the nice word for that is cremation. Yeah. Light me on fire and I mean, after I'm dead, don't just light me. Yeah. Don't do that. You know what I mean. Well, think about this. Like, you got like a grave site sitting there. You're going to get dug up sooner or later. I mean, do I really need like a 4 by 10 foot area for the rest of my, well, for the rest of anybody's life to be designated to just me? No, someone could plant like a garden in there and, you know, grow some food, right? I mean, really, let's think about it realistically. Yeah, hey, you know, if you want to plant like a tree on top of me with like apples and then eat them, that's cool. But they don't let you do that in the cemetery. They just take up space, right? So, I am kind of I am more of a naturalist, like a conservativist, a conservationist, where I think you should conserve everything and not waste it. And to me, cemeteries waste a lot of space.
I feel like I wouldn't want to be in a casket for the rest of my life.
What if you woke up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Turn me into dust so I don't ever have to worry about it. Yeah. Now I'm going to go visit my grandfather died a year ago from today. Actually, it's kind of funny we're talking about this. So I'm going to go visit his grave this weekend. But just to, you know, look at that, it's kind of a generational thing too. You know, like the way people think about it. So I'm not trying to be disrespectful by it because I do go visit people's graves and things like that. But I think there might be a different way to do it. Yeah. Yeah, I could be like part of the future cycles, right? Instead of trapped in the ground. Yeah, I like it. So then the last cycle, let's keep going, guys. You guys have a project we have to get you started on. There is the phosphorus cycle. And like water, carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen, the phosphorus must be cycled in order for an ecosystem to support life. Phosphorus is kind of an easy cycle to draw. The phosphorus cycle is the movement of phosphorus in different chemical forms from the surroundings to organisms and then back to the surroundings again. Very similar to the other ones. Phosphorus is usually found in rocks. Okay, it's also found in a lot of coral, seacoast, and things like that. So like a lot of the phosphorus we get for fertilizers from Florida. We'll talk more about that later. But it's also found in soil and rock as calcium phosphate. And this dissolves in water to form phosphates. Now the roots of plants can absorb phosphates. And humans and animals that eat the plants reuse the organic phosphate, and when humans and animals die, phosphorus is returned to the soil. So why are phosphates important? What did I just draw? A phosphate, a sugar, and a nitrogen base. What did I just draw? Everybody say nucleotide. Nucleotides are the monomers of nucleic acids. Without phosphate, I don't have DNA or RNA, right? Then, how about this one? What's that? ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Phosphate's pretty important. That's our energy source, right? Without ATP, we don't exist, period, end of sentence. Okay? No energy without phosphates. So we know phosphates are important. Now, this is kind of a kindergarten picture, but I really want you guys to think about this. Water hits rock. Does water like to bond to things? Yeah, we've talked about that, right? So, and if water's acidic, like acid rain, it becomes even more of an issue, correct? Okay, it'll break down even more rock. Then that runs off, plants take it in, animals, they go to the bathroom on rocks all the time. Uric acid, is that acidic? Yeah, so this whole process of defecating on a rock from a bird, right, from guana, it will break down the rock even more, okay? Now, we can get into the whole ocean thing and the water thing. If you're a rock in water, you're constantly being broken down, right? Just think about it, okay? So that's part of that whole aquatic ecosystem as well. And some of those things come up into streams and things like that and die, and they put the phosphorus there. And then other animals eat that. Fungus and molds grow. They have energy too. Anyway, this whole phosphorus cycling just keeps going around and around and around. Now, this leads back to earth science, okay? Eventually, if I break down all my rock, I don't have any more rock, right? And you go, Mr. Mason, there's something called the rock cycle, right? Can somebody walk me through the rock cycle? Oh boy, let's do this together. This should be common knowledge. Okay, here we go. So we all know because of Alfred Wegener, that's the famous guy with plate tectonic theory, right? You guys remember this? Okay. We have these plates on our Earth. Okay, basically big slabs. Think of them as like flat pieces of metal for right now. And if they push against each other, go like this and push your hands together. What do you feel? You feel heat. Even if you go really slow, it gets warm, right? Now take them apart and move them slow. It gets cooler, right? And push them together and move the same speed, but move. You feel the heat? Okay. So imagine all the weight that's on the plates of the Earth, and then they push and they slide against each other. And when two run into each other, they do this sometimes. What's this? Everybody say subduction. Subduction. Can you remember this now or no? Okay. So if it gets subducted and goes down, a couple things can happen. It can melt, become part of liquid, the liquid molten core of the Earth, okay, which creates something called igneous rock, right? Okay. Or it can come up and do a very similar thing and release a lot of that, become a volcano. We know that too, right? Okay. The same idea. That's igneous rock. Sometimes things fall and things get washed away and then become sediment. That's called sedimentary rock. And then the pressures of the Earth push those together and kind of fuse them together. Does that make sense? Okay, so you got a few different types of rock. So are we always making replacement phosphorus? Yes. Okay. Because nothing goes away. It just gets subducted or made part of what's yet to come. Sometimes those plates go up and they form what? Mountains, and then that's why you find like seashells at the tops of mountains, phosphorus, right? Okay, all right. So really, if you guys can like take that concept out of earth science, you'll be doing pretty well. Okay. Phosphorus cycle. So we talked about 4 cycles. The water cycle is the continuous movement of water between the atmosphere, land, and the oceans. Animals, plants, and other photosynthesizing organisms play an important role in cycling carbon and oxygen through the ecosystem. Don't forget, you can't separate the carbon and the oxygen cycle. They're tied too closely together. And nitrogen must be cycled through an ecosystem so that nitrogen is available for organisms to make proteins. Why do I need them to make proteins? Because they're the amino group in the amino acid, the NH2 group. Without them, you cannot have an amino acid, therefore cannot have a protein. And like water, carbon, and oxygen, and nitrogen, the phosphorus must be cycled in order for an ecosystem to support life. Why? Well, the nucleic acid world needs phosphorus. That means DNA and RNA do not exist without it. Neither does ATP, our energy currency of our bodies. Okay? So we're going to work on our cycle project.